Back, I was talking in a previous segment about ancient technology and ancient genius. I do make a number of series, and sometimes I know people don't find all the information in the series. So a person might be watching this, for example, who has not seen some of the other series. But I've been talking about the ancient genius and technology in the sense of making a case for a previous great age or civilization. Now, if we consider ourselves really advanced today, in some ways, obviously, the human race right now is very destructive and wasteful. But consider a period of time in the history of our planet, maybe 50, 60,000 years ago, in 70,000 BC, or around that time, a huge eruption happened in the Indonesia area, massive eruption, and we went on through the ice ages for quite a long period of time. Now, primitively, I mean, they were people around at that time, and we find cave drawings and so on, amazing stuff that they've done. We don't quite understand what their mentality is. But my case that I'm making is that there had to be not just a few, but an awful lot of really, really smart people, because they may have been spread out, or how would they get around? And they have to find their food, they have to navigate, they have to deal with changing climate and so on. So one thing that they developed, among many others, and we'll get into that later, is shipbuilding. I mean, for way until late, I believe, when was it, the 1800s, late 1700s, where we finally had steam engines. I mean, people sailed around huge, vast areas by ship for a really, really, really long time. And they had, I don't know how, they had a way of doing it. Now, there's a guy named Crichton Miller, Golden Thread of Time, has rediscovered and patented an instrument, a very simple instrument, that proves that anybody using this instrument can navigate. Now, in the previous segment, I was talking about how the forces of nature, as we know them today, we label them, we go to physics classes, and they say, oh, this is gravity, this is electricity, this is this is whatever, But to a layperson, or someone who doesn't take physics, they well, that doesn't mean anything to me. Now, if you take that principle of nature, say electricity, and you call it something that may be the name of a god or something, and then you say, well, you just give it a name, like maybe you say Shakti or Atman or something, and these are very specific terms, but the real understanding is something internal. Now, for thousands of years, people survived, they managed, they traveled, they traded, they had their secrets, there must have been communication. There had to be. I mean, we know that their physical form is as good as ours, as all the voice, legs, everything, so. Now, one thing with regard to the forces of nature, if a general population, because of the daily experience with the world, they're outdoors, they see the lightning, they see all these powers, they feel things, it can become common knowledge that, yes, there's a water spirit. Doesn't everybody know that? Or there's a spirit, there's a beings in trees. Doesn't everybody know that? Now, that kind of information, which is basically the logical content, there's animals, for example, that perceive things that we don't. And now, what if our human frame, this beautiful technology that we live in, what if we can perceive all those kind of things with the right sensitivity? And that could generate an awe, a spirit-filled, like, humbleness, reverence, because awe doesn't have to be frightening. It doesn't mean that just because you hear thunder and whatever you get scared, and that's awe. But you also feel the rain, the blessings, the life, the prana, the sun, the currents, the wind, the breeze, the smells, all those kinds of things that are awe-inspiring in a personal living sense, and we allow our senses these days to be totally occupied by a bunch of electronic waves and images and whatnots. And we eat foods and so on that foul up all the sensitive systems in our body. So how can we possibly expect to understand a kind of culture that lived very, very... Look at what happened with the Native Americans, for example. They lived out in the West or in this part of the world for so long. They had systems. I mean, what's wrong with the genius saying, okay, we grow corn. That's what we grow, and that's our food. And you just get really good at it. I mean, now it's like, well, we have 5,000 different kinds of things we can stuck in our mouth for food, but a lot of them aren't even food anymore. And we keep making and inventing new kinds of stuff. Now, you find a real basic food that you can grow efficiently and healthily and live for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, you better believe that's a kind of genius. And how do they find the food and navigate back and forth? Now, the stars, that's a whole other thing. I'm going to get a whole series on astronomy and astrology and watching the stars. If you watch some of my other segments, I talk a lot about astronomy, especially in regards to 2012 and predictive cycles and cosmic cycles that maybe ancient meditators, yogis, shamans knew about, and actually had certain devices like the thing that Crichton Miller reinvented to navigate. I'm learning about star navigation right now, and it's incredibly fascinating. It's the most reliable thing because a star will always be in the same place if it's a fixed star. And our magnetic compass, I know as a student pilot, that you're around the Earth, a magnetic compass, even though it's a navigator's best friend in the air and on ship and has been for centuries, but still, a star is very precise, you know, and predictable. So that we're going to get into that too. So the case I'm making is really, you know, the genius and the awe. And I'm going to get into just briefly here some real samples. Power of limits. Now, a book about design and proportion. And I just get into it real briefly here. The author's name is Georgi Doszi, D-O-C-Z-I. I can't pronounce his name, so I won't even try. But the idea of proportion and measurement, okay, you can do that by... Why are there so many star circles around the world? Circles on the ground? Because people watched the stars and naturally they pegged out astronomical cycles. And then they designed their whole, like the pyramids around them and proportions like this, you know. Okay, now you can get into symbolic sacred geometry by Miranda Lundy. More examples of really basic stuff that you can do with a compass and protractor. You take some real basic shapes and you get into more of the three-dimensional solids, which you can see in nature, crystals. Ancient people could easily see those things. Examples of all you got to do is look at a sunflower. You can see spirals. The whole idea of sacred geometry I'm going to get into. And very, very simple tools. You have something straight that you can measure. You can put two sticks together. And you can use a measuring device like this to map out equal, equal, equal. So these simple devices we're going to get into, a lot of people recognize these, but these could have been used for a long, long time. And are still used today.